Good morning and welcome to World Changer Empowering Female Leaders. I'm Chavonne Stewart, your host, and I just want to say happy Wednesday to all my viewers on today. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. We're midway through our week, and soon our weekend will be here. I hope everyone is just enjoying the weather. We did have some springtime weather here, but we've gotten cold again. But you know how it does. It teases us and then it changes on us real quick. And but soon we'll be full-time spring. So I'm looking forward to it. I want to encourage you all, if you have not done so yet, please go out to YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, and Twitch and make sure that you are subscribed to our pages so that you will know when new content is uploaded or viewing live at that time, because we want you to stay informed and we want you to continue with your support because we love you. Also, as you know, God's Army Movement launched back in January, and we are blessed to be able to sow into those new disciples with military tags, and we could not do it without you. So we thank you for your continued support. And if you want to sow into us again, please cash app us at $ She Is Still Dope. I promise you, the military tags are going out across this world, and it's an honor to be able to say that a soul was saved through the She Is Still Dope network. Also, if you have any prayer requests, please email us at pray@sheisstilldope.com. So, guys, before I get into my special show today, because today is very, very unique, we want to remember that it is Women's History Month. But I thought it was so befitting as I started to do research, and it definitely ties into the show on today, is National Deaf History Month. And I did not realize that it was until I was out there doing research. And it actually started on March 13th and it goes to April 15th. And we have to understand there are people that are born deaf, that are people that within time they may lose some of their hearing or all of their hearing, but they are still individuals and they still can make a difference in this world. And that's why our show is titled Not Disabled, Differently Abled. So I just want to give you some brief history on individuals that have achieved despite being differently able. April 15th, 1817, America's first public school for the deaf was opened. And April 8th, 1864, Gallaudet University, the world's first institution dedicated to advanced education for the deaf and hard of hearing, was officially founded. And more than 100 years later, on March 3rd, 1988, Gallaudet hired its first deaf president in response to its students' Deaf President Now movement. Also, Shirley Jean Adam, an individual who has an ED, is the first Black deaf woman in the U.S. to earn a doctoral degree. She was born in 1941 in Nacogdoches, Texas, and Allen became deaf at the age of 20 following a bout of typhoid fever. She was a professor at the Rochester Institute of Technology for 28 years before retiring in 2001. Juliette Gordon Low was born in 1860 and founded the Girl Scouts of the United States in 1912 after enduring multiple ear injuries as a child that resulted in near total hearing loss. So, those of you who are Girl Scouts like I was, Juliette Gordon Low, she also suffered from hearing loss. And the next person I want to recognize today is Audrey Norton, born in 1927, was the first deaf actress to appear on an American network television. Norton acted in major sitcoms throughout the 60s and 70s on ABC, NBC, and CBS. In 1967, she became the founding member of the National Theater of the Deaf, the first production company to regularly feature performances in American Sign Language. And finally, I want to recognize Marley Matlin. She's an Oscar winner, and she was in the movie Children of a Lesser God. And also, Miss Matlin is deaf as well. So that shows you that just because we are differently able does not mean we cannot achieve. And there are many, many more that I could have talked about, but I chose those few because it represented Women's Month and Deaf History Month. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this history break and continue to do some more research. We have to understand and know our past and our history before we assume that we haven't achieved. And a lot of times that's what happens. But when you know achievements, it helps you do and want to continue to achieve as well. So we're going to go ahead and get into the actual show. As I told you, our theme today is not disabled, but differently able. And I have some wonderful, wonderful guests. And also, we have something new today. We're going to actually have an interpreter today that's going to interpret what we're saying so that those that are deaf or hard of hearing, they will be able to know what was being said in our conversation. So I'm honored to have that on my show today. But our special guests are Tiffany Jackson and Delisa Robinson. So let me just give you a few introductions of both of the young women. Delisa Robinson is a co-founder and interpreter manager of Accessible Integrated Media, an interpreting production company that focuses on accessible content creation, utilizing different communications so that accessibility is never a need as it is a lifestyle. She's also the owner of Eyeth Consultants LLC, which provides well-rounded certified American Sign Language interpreters and CART services to both the private and public sector. Ms. Robinson graduated from Maryville College with a BA in interpreting, Gallaudet University with an MA in interpreting, and an MA from Rochester Institute of Technology in medical interpreting. She's a nationally certified freelance interpreter working for close to 20 years in the field and previously has served on various committees and boards for the National Alliance of Black Interpreters, the DC chapter, and the Potomac chapter of the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. Delisa's goal is making access your first thought and not an afterthought. I like that. The goal is not to create spaces for individuals that are deaf, but space them for them in general, especially BIPOC deaf. Furthermore, she desires to make the interpreting field in academia space become as diverse as the deaf community. Thank you so much for Lisa Robinson for being on the show today. Our next guest is Tiffany Jackson. They're co-founders of the organization. Tiffany Jackson is the CEO and visionary of Accessible Integrated Media and TRJ Bridges. Her passion for deaf access amongst the arts led her to become a certified disability manager through the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. She served for the Department of Defense for 7 years and 3 years in the EEO administration. Furthermore, she annually choreographs for the Model Secondary School for the Deaf in Washington, D.C. She has completed the preliminary knowledge portion of the National Interpreter Certification, Virginia Quality Assessment Examination, and is gaining experience to complete the performance portion while building bridges with the multilingual communities. So thank you so much, ladies, for being my guest today. This topic, I think, is well deserved. Is the timing? I promise you, I did not know this was National Deaf History Month until I went out there and I was like, oh, look at that. So I was glad that it happened. So Tiffany, if you can unmute yourself, I see that you're muted. But it's such an honor. I I work in special education, so I understand when dealing with kids, and I work with kids from what they call SID kids all the way up to high functioning. And I like what you said. It's about building bridges. People shy away, or people are critical, even as kids. But once you get understanding, you know how to do better. And then when you look at your family, and I have family members who are labeled as special needs, but one thing I can say, and when you think about, just a side note, when you think about the love of Christ, they exhibit. It's no hindrance there. They don't see race. They don't see color. They show the love, and they're looking for the love. And I love being in special education. I enjoy serving. I look at it as I'm serving. And if it's simply just holding a little child in my lap, just comforting them, I'm there for it, because it's a wonderful thing, and it's nothing to look down upon. So I commend you all what you're doing, and we're going to get into our topic today. Not disabled, differently able. And I think the topic is befitting because it applies to all of us. Whether we realize it or not, we all are differently able. We all have different capabilities. Where we lack in one area, God increases us in another area. And that's why I chose the scripture, 2 Corinthians 12:9. It says to be different means, well, it says, each time he said, my grace is all you need. So that's letting us know no matter what our setbacks are, his grace is all that we need. His power works best in weakness. Wherever we're weak, he'll make us strong. So now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. And so when we boast about our weakness, look at the power of God that comes upon us to make us able to do all that he's called for us to do. So to be different means you don't always blend with the status quo. It means that what works for others and applies to others does not always work and apply to you. So you have to find another avenue to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. So, ladies, go ahead. I want you to first tell the people because I promise you, I'm excited. It's African American women that are doing something that I never thought well, it wasn't my calling to do. But you guys are doing a very unique thing. You're working together, then you're outside with your own thing doing it. So, give us a little explanation about your business, accessible.
So thank you for having us, first of all. I really appreciate the opportunity to not just highlight the company, but the deaf community at large, because that's something that doesn't get to happen enough. And that's one purpose of AIM, actually. So AIM actually came about as the bios mentioned. Tiffany was actually the visionary of the concept of the company. And Tiffany and I had actually partnered before in our other companies, TRJ Bridges, hers, and mine, Eyeth Consultants, LLC. And so we already had the partnership there, but AIM is a totally separate company, and it came about. And Tiffany can give you more on her actual vision and how that happened. But I came in because during COVID, a lot of information is being posted, whether online. A lot of content was highly being visible out in the community because people are at home and they're quarantining. And during that time, we found that a lot of our deaf colleagues or friends were contacting us separately in our own, lives and asking for help. Like, could you please interpret this information? What does this mean? What's happening? Because they didn't have access.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, access is not a new thing during COVID. It's been a lack of access. We're not the first people, to try to bring this to the forefront. It's been happening, but it got worse during COVID. Deaf people are at home, couldn't access, their daughter's Girl Scout troop meeting online, or things that were happening in their private life as well as their personal business and jobs. So we were interpreting things all the time, just pro bono, just trying to help out.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to be to a point where we were like, we should do something about this. So AIM came about from that and a few other reasons as well. But in the midst of that, it has just morphed into this production company that utilizes direct communication. So instead of having a hearing interpreter like Nicole, who is here, thank you so much for being here, Nicole, interpreting content, we actually hire deaf people from the community. So it could be a certified deaf interpreter, which is called a CDI, or it could be just a deaf interpreter who's not certified. But we figured that the content is there, the access is not. And so, just like in any other movement that you've had, like civil rights movement and so forth, change didn't come until someone else on the opposite end opened the door. And so we just partnered with the community and said we don't want to hire hearing interpreters to do this. They have to work. They don't have issues. They don't have problem with
Mm-hmm.
access. So we brought them in and basically opened the door and said, now the deaf community, you know the language, you know the culture, you can match that community better. So how about you interpret it? So we're
Mm-hmm.
giving jobs back to the community. We're empowering them. So instead of saying, hey, there's no space for the deaf community, we're going, yeah, the space is there. You just need to move and let them have it. And so that's basically what AIM is doing. It's more than just interpreting stuff on social media that's not there. It's just trying to basically boil the ocean. Accessibility is large.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge thing to undertake, but we're taking it one bite at a time. Tiffany, did you want to add anything else to that?
Definitely, definitely. Again, thank you so much for having us. We
You're
do
welcome.
appreciate it. Um, so for me, this vision was given to me 2 years ago, but I was very self-conscious of it as a growing interpreter. This
Okay.
field does not have that many people of color in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to tread lightly and make sure that you do have credibility to do what you can do to support the community in an official way. which is the reason why I brought the expertise of Delisa Robinson and I into this vision, because of her years of expertise and um, knowledge and wisdom that she brings into the fold uh, of this company. I wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't be where we were without her. But 2 years ago, when the Lord gave me this vision, I had no idea that COVID was going to happen. Of course, none of us did. But I look back and I think, wow, if I would have followed what the Lord told me, even a year ago, and this is 2 years prior to COVID that He gave me this vision, where would we be now? How much information would have been ready for the deaf community? That is something that I ponder quite often, but I'm still very happy that He has made it so that we have been able to create this business in such a short time. And we are definitely investing our skin and teeth in this. This is a personal investment for the both of us, where we are really dumping in what our resources to be able to provide this for the community. And so we're just really excited about what the Lord has for us in the future, and what fruits will come out of it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. You said a whole lot. The first thing you said was the people of color. And I've gone on missions, and what I found, you don't see many people of color that's missionaries. And so it's time for the awareness. So it's either they're not serving or they're serving and they're not getting the recognition that needs to be done. And I think you've brought that awareness. It needs that recognition. There are people that are suffering in every ethnic group there is. There are deaf people in every ethnic group. And it's not about color, but it's about every ethnic group having someone that looks like them that can speak for them and represent them. So that's very important. So I think it's awesome what you all are doing. You're bringing, first of all, a recognition and awareness to the deaf and hearing, hard of hearing community. That's the first thing. We can, like you said, people don't think about it. But I remember, even when you go to your bank and you're going to your ATM machine, there's a little slot that has for people who have hard of hearing that they can put a little thing in there so that they can hear. So it's like an undercover awareness about it. But now it's like, let's put it out in the open. There are people that are dealing with this that are differently able, and let's make it, like you said, you saw a need. Let's provide that need for them. They can function just like any other adult if they have what they need to function. And so you're doing an awesome job by first bringing that awareness and then supplying them with what they need. So now, does AIM service outside of the Virginia, D.C. area?
So because all of our content is online,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
We're not just nationwide, we're worldwide. Anyone who
Awesome.
is able to view our content and understand sign language. I'm not going to say American Sign Language, I'm going to say sign language. Um, will be able to have accessibility to this information.
Okay.
The thing about it is that we are taking uh, already created content of that is found already on the internet, and we're just adding a deaf interpreter into that and letting that message be accessible to that audience.
Hmm.
So if you're talking about what recently happened, and any of the protests that recently happened, we want to be able to find someone in that community that represents that information and have
Hmm.
them do the work. We are not impartial about what content we choose.
Okay.
It's all about information getting out. We're tired of them being left in the dark, if
Yes.
you were to say.
Hmm.
We're in 2020, and
Hmm.
there's just information that we struggle with to get.
Hmm.
It's a
Hmm.
whole different level with them not able to just go into the grocery store and
Hmm.
overhear a conversation and you learn that the manager is really the owner of Giant Food Store. And you're like, oh, I didn't know Giant Food
Yeah.
Store franchises.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
information that you overheard.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have that benefit. So it's time for us to really consider them and say, let me at least do this content for you. Let me at
Mm-hmm.
least make something accessible so that you can learn and then do something with it. That's our goal. We want to see how our information flourishes and makes their lives better, help them to become
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, help them
Mm-hmm.
to become franchise owners. That's our goal.
Yeah. I don't think people in the majority really
Mm-hmm.
recognize how much the minority really go through, because you're in the majority, you don't have to learn anything about them to function and live, but the minorities have to learn everything about the majority in order to function and live.
Mm-hmm.
So little simple things like growing up deaf in a house where everyone's hearing, not having exposure to things at the dinner table, regular everyday conversation your family has, knowing your medical history because maybe your mom just took you to the doctor and dealt with the doctor one-on-one because you're deaf. So they just did that exchange for you, and now you're an adult and you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
about your family generationally or whatever. Or we did a video on our YouTube about the PPP program because there are a lot of deaf entrepreneurs and owners and business owners and so gig workers who had no idea that they could apply for money.
Mm-hmm.
Literally no idea, because how would they know? So I mean, not that they couldn't know on their own, but they go through more hurdles to get that information. So we posted a video about that, and literally we're getting lots of replies from people who were going, "Thank you." Been trying to find out about this. Excuse me, was trying to find out about this, but couldn't get the correct information in a way that I could digest it. And now, because of that, they're able to go forth and decide what they want to do in their business. It's just simple things like that you don't think about it. You don't think about it, but it is an everyday lived frustration, no different parallel to the Black struggle. A lot of people who are not Black don't oftentimes realize, oh, I didn't know that you were doing this and doing that or whatever. And sometimes, even though government is supposed to do certain things for those individuals, they sometimes miss the mark too. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have to figure it out and try to make a
Yeah.
way. And that's part of what AIM is doing. We're in there trying to say, hey, if you're not going to do it, government, or if you're not going to do it, so and so, et cetera, then we're going to figure out a way. And so that's basically what AIM is doing.
That's awesome. And like you said, we do take for granted. We when you have those senses, like your hearing and your sight, yes, you can read that news report or you can turn on that news and they're speaking so you can hear. But how many news outlets, and I'm not familiar, are offering some type of where they're flipping it, where they're allowing the deaf to be able to hear, like they're specifically having that interpreter, or they're doing something on the other side where people who have hearing impairedness, not hearing, the hard of hearing, or even the blind. What are you doing to help them hear the news or see the news and know what's going on? Because I never thought about the PP loan. I mean, I can read it, but if
Yeah.
you have a business and they're saying, okay, it's money out there, but I'm clueless because I
No, yeah.
hear it. So that's awesome. So I hope whoever's watching who's a business owner, go out to their YouTube, listen to see what they're telling you so you'll know. I don't know what the deadline is, but we definitely don't want you to miss it. But go out and check it out so that you'll know what's going on. And I'm sure even down to just COVID. I'm pretty sure you guys put a YouTube video out there of the what was required during COVID, because if you can't hear what's going on or you're missing it, you need to know. You have to be kept abreast just like everyone else. So that's very, very, very important. So what has been some of your greatest challenges? And it doesn't have to just pertain to AIM. It could just be just overall just being in this type of business. What was some of your greatest challenges?
Hmm. There are a lot. um, I'm trying to think where to start. Um, in trying to hire deaf interpreters, first of all, finding them, that's been a challenge.
Okay.
There aren't a lot of certified deaf interpreters. number one, but then there's definitely not a lot of Black ones. So we actually had to start a mentoring program to help get some of them trained up and ready to go, because you can be a good signer, but not be a good interpreter. No different than you can be a good speaker, but not be, good conversationalist and so forth, but not be a good presenter. So,
Yes.
so we had to do that. Raising money, we're self-funding, pretty much self-funding this. So that's the type of thing that we're doing. Being Black poses lots of challenges. Making sure that we're treading lightly and making sure that we're not overstepping the deaf community, making sure they get the shine. I know we're here today highlighting AIM as a business, but we always want to make sure we give the deaf community their shine, and we're not trying to take any of that. So making sure we're treading lightly, making sure we're getting the deaf community's buy-in, make sure they get to be empowered, and it's not about Tiffany and Delisa. Getting acceptance from the deaf community. What else? Tiffany, I'm just like, when you said it's a great question, there are plenty of challenges.
I think you've done a really great job. But it's resources is an umbrella term, because if it's something that people are used to seeing or you are aware of, you're aware of social media management, you're aware of clothing designers, you're aware of different types of jobs out here and different types of industries. But this industry is very small, and no one really knows how it gets funded. So it's a challenge because the need is there, but the community lacks in resources, right? But then also those who have the ability to support financially or with resources, they're not aware, so it's very difficult to tap into either community because it's about education. You have to educate first before we can say, hey, now that you know what we're doing, can you help us? Can you partner with us? Is there a way that for you to understand that these people, there's all this training and in this area? We actually have a partner, Nicole Brown, who is in Carter Prize Solutions. That's her company. And she has allowed us to utilize her office space because she recognizes that, wow, and she's in cybersecurity. She's like, as a Black woman, she said, there is no certification in cybersecurity for individuals who are deaf. How are they able to get into this industry that is booming? So she's partnered with us, and so we're utilizing her resource, and then on the other end, we're providing her resources with helping to establish education information that she's an expert in to the deaf community. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for partnerships. We're looking for resources, people who would like to get their word out, get this information out to a new group of people who are desperately in need of just knowing and having that option.
Yeah,
That's so true. Now you mentioned the mentoring. So have you officially started a mentoring program, or this person and you're coming in, you're kind of grooming them? Want to speak on that mentoring? Because there could be someone out here who is interested.
It's official. There is an official
official.
mentoring program. Yes, we've hired someone from the deaf community to help us out. So just a little background. The interpreting and the deaf community are very small, and trust is huge. Your name is all you have, and if you ruin that or break that trust, can't really work. So we, as a hearing individual who happens to know sign language, if we run across someone who wants to be hired, and we do have a assessment or benchmark that we look at to to see where their skill level is and what type of jobs to get them, what type of videos they can interpret.
Mhm.
And as a hearing person, I would never tell a deaf person or criticize their language. It's
Mhm.
their language, it's their culture. It's not my job to say anything about that.
Mhm.
So, in order to benchmark them, to assess them, we actually hired a deaf person from the community who has that background to do that type of analysis and give us the feedback on what this person's skill level is. So they're hearing it directly from another person in the community, not us. So that's the first level, is just basically to get an assessment, which is the same thing actually hearing interpreters go through when we want to work for an agency or so forth. We get assessed. They rank us, they certify us, they benchmark us. And so we do the same thing for the deaf interpreters. And that happens through that first person who does that screening. And then from there, we go from there. Are they ready to work, or do they need more help, so to speak? And if they need a little bit more polishing, then they go through the mentoring program and they meet with somebody as often as they like to. And actually, AIM pays for part of that program for them. And then after so long, it drops down to them paying for a portion of it and we pay for a portion of it, because we want them invest in yourself. We are not going to sit here and pay for all of this and you don't even really want to do it. You're not interested. You're not showing up to the appointments and so forth. So they invest in themselves and we invest in them as well. And when they're done with the program and they, have increased their skill level and are able to be more fluent in the language and know how to do the job properly, and they understand what interpreting means and so forth, because there's some ethical things related to interpreting as well. You don't just go to a job and just start signing. I mean, there's some ethical things, there's some prep work that you do. So once they learn the ins and outs of that, then they give back to AIM by interpreting for us for a little bit, for free, so to speak. But it's not really free because AIM is invested in them. And then once they've met that quota of interpreting for us, then they're just hired as an interpreter in the community for us. And in the process of that, it develops a partnership and relationship and a trust for all of us as well. So that's sort of our way of bringing in more interpreters, because a lot of them are young Black deaf individuals who want to be certified, who want to get this skill level, but they're not looking for school programs. They don't know where to go. They're not trying to find it out. They're not being as aggressive about it. So we're going, hey, here's a door for you. Let me open it. And once they do that, we're actually interested in paying for their certification too. We want to invest in them, and so that they can invest in their own community, but also invest back in AIM, which is ultimately investing in the community as well. So it's a full circle thing that we're working on, and it is formal. We started it probably end of last year at some point, but it was a brainchild from the beginning when we realized there's not a lot of interpreters already available in the community. Certification is not easy to obtain for one, but there are a lot of people that are working without the certification, but they're not on a national registry like the certified interpreters are. So we didn't know where to find them. So it was literally a grassroots word of mouth thing. Like, do you know someone in the who's your
Yeah.
friends? And so individuals were referring themselves to us
Okay.
through their friends, through their networks, and that's how it's grown to be a registry of interpreters that we keep in house, certified
Mhm.
or not, and we employ them. So
So you said two things that came to mind. The first, I wanted to mention the difference. There's a difference to being an interpreter, and I think you said just knowing sign language. So explain that difference for the viewers, because we don't know. So explain that difference.
So I was likening it to a person who, if, as an English speaker, I can, hold a conversation with you, but
Mhm.
getting up to do a formal presentation or being an orator of some sort is a different skill, a different skill set. So I can be a good signer,
Okay.
meaning a good speaker, good conversationalist, because I know English or I know sign language. But getting up to being an interpreter is a different skill set. So being able to actively take a message in one language and put it into another language. That's a skill set. That's a practice. That doesn't just happen overnight. You have to learn how to do that thing. And so a deaf person is no different in that regard. Learning how to take language, whether you're reading it off of a script
Mhm.
or that is captioned on the video in English and taking that and putting it into American Sign Language. A lot of deaf individuals, English is not their first language, number one. So that's the first hurdle. Learning how to take that information and putting it into your first language, American Sign Language. That doesn't just happen overnight. There is a training, there is a skill set that you have to develop to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the difference right there. I can talk to you right now, we're having a conversation, but if you wanted me to get up and formally do a presentation, those are different skill sets that we learn in school. Everyone takes, 101 and learning how to present. Mm-hmm. There's research, there's study, there's, body, all of that goes into it. Plain interpreting isn't any different in that regard. You have to learn how to do that. What Nicole is doing right now is not easy.
Okay.
At all. So, and she's managing 3 people talking. So it's not an easy skill set at all. Tiffany, would you agree?
Definitely. I mean, which is one of the reasons why on the side, I'm like, keep that energy, Nicole, because it's a lot of work. American Sign Language is not English hand movements.
Mm-hmm.
It's a it's a different dimension.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 4D language, and it takes your brain to be able to process information at the split of a second. A lot of people think that we go on stages and wave our hands, but it's a lot of more work than that. It's physically and mentally exhausting, which is the reason why we typically have 2 interpreters that do content together. So Nicole is doing a really good job for in my novice experience, because we typically switch out every 15 to 20 minutes because of how mentally and physically exhausting it is, and we need a break for a minute, and then we're able to keep going. So I just wanted to add one more thing.
Go ahead.
Thing that Miss Delisa had said, and she had mentioned how we are really supporting the community and providing a full servant support for them. The thing that we are also doing is with Nicole's company, Carter Enterprise Solutions, she has also allowed us to establish a national certification testing site in her office, which means we can now help support deaf interpreters to get the skill, get the training that they need, and also nationally certify them. I mean, it literally gives me goosebumps.
Wow.
The things that we are accomplishing, because that is something in our Black community that a lot of us do not have. We have great skilled interpreters, but none of us have the ability, the place, the location to certify others. So I'm excited about that, and we are almost ready to have the community come in and get their certifications in Hyattsville, Maryland. So
wow, that's awesome. I'm so excited for you. I'm like, that's just awesome. You're helping getting the people what they need. And I just thank God, just people that like Nicole that is open to partnering with you and just giving you that space. Something as simple as an office space. That's just enough in itself that you can say, I have this space. Because sometimes people are looking at it, well, where are you located? But now you can say, I'm officially here. And then you're bringing the people that are deaf or hard of hearing in, you're training them, you're promoting them, you're providing jobs for them, you're doing what a business should be doing. You're making leaders. You're creating leaders within the deaf community, and that's a wonderful achievement, and I just thank God for it. So as we're beginning to wrap up, I had some other questions, but it's 2 of them that I want to put out there to ask, because we brought up we did mention schools, and I don't know if you all really try to partner with schools, but what recommendations do you make when parents are faced with a child who is deaf or hard of hearing? That's a mouthful for parents.
It is a mouthful. So we're open to partnering with schools. And as far as having a child that is deaf, there are actually more hearing parents that have a deaf child than actually deaf parents having deaf children.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, there's actually more. And so I've met, and I know Tiffany has as well, tons of people who have a deaf child and don't know sign language.
Mm,
And I'm a mother, so I can't imagine not being able to communicate with my child. And so if that were to happen to me, I would, whether it is I had a child that had a special needs or anything else, I would do my best to learn how to be the best parent for that child, whether they were deaf or anything else. So I think the first thing is learn American Sign Language. I would tell a parent, learn American Sign Language. Start there. And I know there's lots of controversy in the community itself as to what's the best communication method. And so it's not my place to make that decision for that parent. It's not AIM's place to make that decision for that parent. But I would definitely tell them to seek all the options. And there are tons of options. There is sign language. There is oh gosh, you could also tell the parent to go. First of all, they're probably going to get the hearing tested and so forth and so on to see where their child's level of hearing is. Cochlear implants. There are oral communications. There's a lot of technology these days, but just because someone is deaf doesn't mean it's a problem. It doesn't mean if they're broke, they need to be fixed. I mean, the title of the show is Differently Able. There's nothing wrong with having a child that has a special needs, whether they be deaf or anything else.
mm-hmm.
You have to learn how to be the best parent for that child. Now, I understand in your closed time, there's a lot to deal with in that. I mean, parents have, grief and guilt and was it me? There's tons of things we deal with as parents. I get that. But there's nothing wrong with that child. God made them just the way they are. And now it's your chance to figure out how to support that child. And so I would take that to prayer. I would take that to all the professionals out there to say, what are the options? And then as that child gets over, let them decide. Do they want to be a member of the deaf community? Like what type of situations how do they want to fit into that world? Because it's not my place. And I don't really think it's the parents' place to make that decision, but it's the parents' choice to educate themselves and open up those doors so that they can figure out what's best suited for that child. So I don't really have any major advice on that because I don't think that it's my place to tell someone what to do in this regard. And so, Tiffany, I don't know if you have any different opinions or advice on that, but it's a difficult question and it's a difficult journey, but it's not really my place to decide that or even recommend. I would just say get educated. Definitely get educated.
And you said a mouthful. I think you kind of mentioned involving the child because you forget, I'm not a parent, but I know how my parents are. They're protective. And so parents feel that, okay, the less I tell the child, the better the child may be. But when you have certain situations, I think it becomes, I need to involve my child because this is affecting my child much deeper
Yep.
than something as simple as choosing a school for a child to go to. So that part, I think it is important. And then, like you said, educate yourself. Sometimes as parent, you got to get over the initial shock. But now let's get educated so that you will know what's out there for your child so that your child can succeed and excel in academics. So that, what you said was, to me, was perfect. It didn't, you're not telling them do this, do that. But you're saying, get educated. And don't say you can't get educated. There's libraries, and now we got Google, and so you can Google pretty much anything
Absolutely.
you want to know. And then, like the word says, you have not because you ask not. Start asking questions. You go to these schools, ask questions, and when one person say no, you go to the next person because somewhere somebody's gonna say yes in the situation, so that you can get your child what they need, so that they don't fall under the radar, or whatever the situation may be. And so we're gonna close out I want you guys to tell us what has been some of your greatest rewards and to doing what you're doing, and then give the viewers a last word of encouragement.
So I think, no, I don't think. I know when we were able to put the video out for the PPP
Absolutely.
and get the message, and it was a nice paragraph from
Okay.
someone on Facebook who just said, "I have been searching for
Wow.
this information, and
Mm,
no one has been able to provide accessibility to me.
mhm.
Thank you so much." That moment, all of the work that we have
Yes.
been doing was like, yes,
Yes.
somebody sees,
Yeah,
somebody was able to benefit.
for the one person.
And that's really all we need. We want deaf people to be like, oh, that's what they're saying. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, we had an interpreter who was like, I always wanted to know what the Breakfast Club was saying.
They're saying,
I mean, that's their prerogative.
Mhm.
So it's really just interesting that we're like, yeah, you should have the option to know. Or say, I don't care. I want to ignore that piece of information. We
Mhm.
have the same, we want them to have the same options. So that was
Mhm.
a highlight. And also, right now, with us receiving more support from the community by them spreading the awareness of who we are. And
Mhm.
now we're starting to get people coming in and saying, hey, we would like to be a part of this. Hey, we would
Mhm.
like to be interpreters. Hey, how can I get involved? I'm like, yes, 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 finally.
Mhm.
So um, we're excited about that, and we're excited about um, all of the little wins. They're
Mhm.
little wins, but we know
Mhm.
that the Lord has more for us, and we're seeing Him opening doors left and right. We just got to get the work done.
Okay. Awesome. And Delisa,
to
you
keep it
have.
short, I actually was going to say some of the same things she said, so I will kudos to that. I have two other things. One of them is just recognizing. I don't think I knew how important representation and direct communication really, really was. Like it's something we say, but it's meeting some of these deaf people in community and having conversations with them. It was like um, now, for example, everything is buy black on, buy black on. We want to support
Mhm.
our community, and we were tired of going through white people to get what we need. We're going to support our own. Deaf people feel the same way. Like I don't want to go to an
Mhm.
interpreter to get what I need. I want it myself. So hiring them and having that direct communication, it just blew me away how hungry, how excited they were about it. And it fills me up. It's just so cool. And I agree with what Tiffany said about the Facebook post and stuff because I was thinking the same thing. But my last thing was actually getting to know Tiffany better in this process and growing close to growing close to each other as business partners. Like I didn't know I would find what I found in her. So
Mhm.
that would be my other win. So
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. That is so awesome. But I just want to thank you, ladies, for being a part of World Changer. You're definitely changing the world. You're definitely changing the views on the deaf community, and I salute you both. You're world changers, and it's much needed. And I pray that this video reach people that wouldn't have never thought in the world about the concerns within the deaf community. And I just pray that God just send those financiers that you need because you got a lot of work to do. You have territory you haven't even tapped into. And we all know it takes money to tap into territories. And so I pray that He not only sends you the finances, but the labors. And the labor is going to come from the deaf community. So let's rise them up. Those that have been hidden, those that have been afraid because they've been rejected, we come against that and we just say, Lord, you rise them up and you send them to AIM so that they can get trained and go back into their community and help others because it's a domino effect. And I want to thank Miss Nicole, our interpreter. I didn't know all the in-depthness of being an interpreter, but you take a nap after this because in 15 minutes, You need to take a break. And you have been going now. And so I'm glad I did bring you in early on because I didn't realize that. But thank you so much. You have done a wonderful job. And I just want to thank the ladies of AIM. Go out, support them, like their page, partner with them. You know, whatever need they have, if they put it out there and you can help with that need, help them out because they're doing a phenomenal work in their community. So make sure you follow them on Facebook, on Instagram as well. Go out to their YouTube page, subscribe to their YouTube page so that you can be aware. If you're an educator and you're working with deaf children or teenagers, get them connected because it's an opportunity for them to potentially walk out with a job. And I know Goodwill does a lot in the disability community by providing jobs. I know here in Georgia, Publix is very big on
Mhm.
providing jobs for people who have disabilities. So it does not hurt to hire somebody who's differently abled.
Not at
They'll
all.
be an asset to your to your organization. It's the same way you would train someone else who may have been born without certain issues. You can do the same for them. It just takes time, it takes patience, it takes love, care, and concern. So I encourage you to do that. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media at DNA of Diversity. And before I close, no matter what we say or do, I have to give others the opportunity to know the salvation that I know. And so if you have not accepted Jesus as your personal savior, it's very simple. Romans 10:9 and 10 says, if you confess with your mouth and you believe in your heart that Jesus died, that he rose again, and he's seated at the right hand of the Father, then you're saved. Once you confess it, you will always be saved. And God said you will have everlasting life. Don't let anyone tell you that you can lose your salvation because they're telling you a lie. And I pray that God will place men and women of God around you that will gird you up and train you and mold you into the disciple that God is calling you to be. I pray that he gives you the know-how to know what church home to be a part of because he tells us that he wants us to come together. He says, forsake not the assembly. So we're to come together in fellowship and worship. And when we do that, that builds us up and gets us prepared to go back out into this world, which we know is evil, but we're able to stand, we're able to fulfill everything that he's called us to do in this kingdom. So I thank you. I praise God for every person that will be changed because of this broadcast. And I thank God for every person that's going to be saved through this broadcast. And I want to remind you to be the change you want to see in others, living in faith, standing in hope, and showing the love of Christ wherever you go. Thank you so much, Tiffany, Lisa, and Miss Nicole for being here today. And I want to thank C.S. Bailey for this opportunity to host World Changer on the She Is Still Dope Network. This is the end of season 2, guys. I love you all. Be blessed. Awesome.